March 17th, 2024. Clarion-Clipperton Zone, Pacific Ocean. 21,247 feet below the surface. A Belgian mining robot, Patania II, a 300-ton autonomous harvester, was conducting routine polymetallic nodule collection. The drill bit stopped. Not a mechanical failure, the sensors detected resistance. Solid resistance. But the sonar imaging showed something impossible. 90-degree angles, parallel lines extending 400 feet. Perfect geometric precision, at a depth where no human structure should exist. At a location where 5,000 newly discovered species are still being named by scientists. In the next 72 hours, 3 things happened. The footage was classified. The mining company erected a 5-mile exclusion zone. And 40 governments quietly sent research vessels to the coordinates. What they found down there doesn't just challenge our understanding of history, it challenges whether we're alone. To understand what's happening, you need to understand the race. The Clarion-Clipperton Zone, a patch of ocean floor between Hawaii and Mexico, bigger than Europe, carpeted with trillions of black potato-sized rocks. These aren't ordinary rocks, they're polymetallic nodules. Each one contains nickel, copper, cobalt, manganese. The exact metals your phone battery needs. The exact metals electric car batteries require. $16 trillion worth. And get this, the International Seabed Authority has already issued 19 exploration contracts. China has one, Russia has one, Japan, Belgium, the UK, all racing to stake their claims. But here's the catch. There are no rules yet. No mining code. The regulations were supposed to be finalized in July 2023. They missed the deadline, which means companies like the Metals Company are pushing to mine now. Without regulations, without environmental protections, without knowing what they're destroying. Because every time a robot goes down there, scientists discover new species. In February 2024, a study revealed 5,180 species living in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. 5,842 of them are new to science. We don't even have names for them yet, and we're about to start strip mining their home. But on March 17th, when Patania II's drill bit stopped, when the sonar detected those impossible angles, the entire equation changed. Because what they found wasn't biology, it was architecture. The mining operation was run by Global Sea Mineral Resources, a Belgian contractor working under an ISA exploration license. They had been operating in their designated claim for 3 weeks. Standard procedure: deploy the harvester robot, vacuum up the nodules from the seafloor, pump them through a riser system to the surface vessel, process and store. On paper, it's simple. In reality, it's one of the most complex industrial operations on the planet. At 21,000 feet, the water pressure is 9,700 pounds per square inch. That's enough to crush a nuclear submarine like a soda can. The temperature is 35 degrees Fahrenheit. The darkness is absolute. No sunlight has reached this depth in millions of years. Patania II was designed for this hell. Its titanium frame houses, hydraulic arms, and a massive vacuum system. It moves across the seafloor like a mechanical caterpillar, its sensors constantly mapping the terrain. The harvester was following a pre-programmed grid pattern when the drill assembly encountered resistance. The operators on the surface vessel, the Normand Energy, saw the power draw spike. The drill motor was pulling maximum amperage, but the bit wasn't rotating. This wasn't a nodule. Nodules are brittle. They crack under pressure. This was solid. The automatic safety system shut down the drill to prevent damage. The chief engineer, Johan Beckers, pulled up the real-time sonar feed on his monitor. The sonar uses sound waves to create a 3D image of the seafloor. It shows nodules as irregular bumps, sediment as smooth plains, and rock outcrops as jagged peaks. But on his screen, the sonar was showing straight lines. Not jagged, not irregular, straight lines. And they weren't random. They formed patterns. Grids. One section showed what could only be described as a wall, running 400 feet long with a height variation of only 3 feet across its entire length. To put that in perspective, that's more precise than most modern construction. And it's sitting at 21,000 feet below the surface, where the pressure is enough to compress steel. where it's been sitting for at least 50,000 years based on the sediment layer. The geological surveys of the Clarion-Clipperton Zone have mapped millions of nodules. They've documented underwater mountains, volcanic ridges, and tectonic fractures. But they've never detected this. Why? Because standard mining surveys use low-resolution sonar. They're looking for mineral deposits, not fine details. But Patania II was equipped with multi-beam sonar designed to avoid underwater obstacles. High-resolution, military-grade. It saw what the broad surveys missed, and what it saw made no geological sense. Beckers immediately called the ship's geologist, Dr. Annika Vandenberg. She had 2 PhDs and 15 years of experience mapping the Pacific Sea floor. She pulled up the sonar data and ran it through the image processing software. She ran it 3 times. Every time, the same result. Geometric structures. She zoomed in on the largest feature. The software outlined it in bright green. 400 feet long, 120 feet wide, approximately 30 feet tall, rectangular, with corners that met at near-perfect 90-degree angles. Dr. Vandenberg stared out at the flat, calm Pacific Ocean and felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She had seen underwater structures before. Ancient shipwrecks, crashed aircraft, even dumped industrial equipment. But those always showed signs of damage, corrosion, biological growth. This was clean, almost polished. She analyzed the material composition data. Patania II's sensors don't just map shapes. They also send back spectral analysis that identifies the chemical makeup of objects. Iron shows one signature. Basalt rock shows another. Manganese nodules show a third. The structure was showing a signature she had never seen before. Not metallic in the traditional sense. Not rock, not ceramic. The closest match in the database was a composite material. Something engineered. Something artificial. But that was impossible. Humans didn't have the technology to build at this depth. Not now. Certainly not 50,000 years ago. She picked up the internal ship phone. This was no longer a mining operation. This was a discovery. Now here's where it gets really strange. The Clarion-Clipperton Zone has been explored since the 1950s. The Scripps Institution of Oceanography discovered it in 1954. Since then, hundreds of research vessels have surveyed the area. How did nobody see this before? It's possible the structure was buried, recently exposed by underwater current shifts or tectonic movement. The Pacific seafloor is not static. Turbidity currents, underwater avalanches of sediment, happen regularly. A recent event could have uncovered what had been hidden for millennia. Or maybe it was always there. But standard surveys focused on nodule density maps, not fine geometry. Mining companies care about mineral concentrations, not archaeological features. Their sonar was tuned to find resources, not anomalies. But here's the wild possibility. What if someone did see it before? And it's been quietly classified for decades. The United States Navy has been mapping the Pacific Ocean floor since World War II. Submarine warfare requires detailed bathymetric charts. They know where every underwater mountain, trench, and canyon is located. If they found something like this, would they announce it? Or would they classify it and bury it in a vault? After all, this is the same Navy that ran Project Azorian in 1974. They built an entire fake deep-sea mining ship, the Hughes Glomar Explorer, as a cover story to recover a sunken Soviet submarine. If they could pull off that deception, what else are they hiding? The mission director, Peter Klaus, was a 20-year veteran of deep-sea operations. He was not a man who panicked easily, but when Dr. Vandenberg showed him the sonar data, his face went pale. He immediately ordered Patania II to halt all operations and hold position. Then he made a satellite call to company headquarters in Belgium. The call was encrypted. The conversation lasted 14 minutes. When he hung up, he turned to Dr. Vandenberg and said 3 words. Deploy the ROV. The remotely operated vehicle is a smaller, more maneuverable robot designed for close-up inspections. It's about the size of a small car, equipped with multiple 4K cameras, powerful LED lights, and a robotic arm. Most importantly, it's tethered to the ship by a fiber optic cable that allows real-time video transmission. At 9:23 a.m. ship time, the ROV was lowered over the side. The crew gathered in the control room. The pilot, Lars Hansen, sat at the main console, his hands on the dual joystick controls. On the central monitor, the camera feed showed blue water fading to black as the ROV descended. The depth counter ticked upward. 500 feet, 1,000 feet, 5,000 feet. The pressure gauge climbed steadily. At 10,000 feet, the sunlight was completely gone. At 20,000 feet, the descent slowed. Lars adjusted the thrusters, bringing the ROV to a gentle hover 50 feet above the seafloor. The lights cut through the water, illuminating a landscape that looked like the surface of another planet. Fine sediment covered everything. Scattered across the plain were the black nodules, thousands of them. And there in the distance was the structure. Lars pushed the joystick forward. The ROV glided through the water. As it approached, the team in the control room leaned closer to their monitors. Nobody spoke. The structure came into full view. It was massive. The ROV's lights couldn't illuminate the entire thing at once. It stretched beyond the range of visibility, disappearing into the darkness. The surface was smooth. Not naturally smooth like water-worn stone, but artificially smooth. Machined. The ROV's lights reflected off it in a way that rock doesn't reflect. It had a sheen, almost metallic. But when Dr. Vandenberg ran the spectral analysis, the results came back the same. Unknown composition, not matching any element in the database. Lars navigated the ROV along what appeared to be a wall. The wall stretched beyond the range of the lights. He adjusted the altitude, bringing the ROV closer. The camera zoomed in, and then they saw it. Symbols, not scratches from geological processes. Not random erosion patterns, deliberate, systematic, repeating. The patterns were etched into the surface, each line about an inch deep and perfectly uniform in width. They ran in horizontal rows, each row containing what looked like mathematical expressions. Circles, lines, dots arranged in specific configurations. The symbols repeated every 10 feet or so, but with slight variations, as if they were communicating different information. Elena Ruiz, a young marine biologist on the team, gasped. She pointed at the screen. "Those aren't random. That's a counting system." She pulled up a reference image on her tablet and held it next to the monitor. The comparison was striking. The symbols on the structure bore an uncanny resemblance to the mathematical language used on the Voyager Golden Record. In 1977, NASA launched the Voyager spacecraft with a golden phonograph record attached. The record contained sounds and images from Earth, along with instructions written in mathematics, specifically a base 8 counting system, because scientists believed any intelligent species would understand math as a universal language. But the Voyager symbols were designed by humans in the 1970s. The structure in front of them was buried under sediment for at least 50,000 years. Dr. Vandenberg checked the sediment core analysis again. The layer of silt covering the structure was 12 meters thick. Based on known sedimentation rates in this part of the Pacific, it would take approximately 50,000 years to accumulate that much material, which meant these symbols predated human civilization by 40,000 years. Predated the pyramids by 47,000 years. Predated agriculture by 38,000 years. Elena looked at Dr. Vandenberg. Her voice was shaking. Did we copy this, or did they copy us? The question hung in the air like a physical weight. If this structure was 50,000 years old, then whoever built it existed long before humans developed writing, mathematics, or any form of advanced technology. Which meant one of two things. Either this wasn't built by humans, or everything we think we know about human history is completely wrong. Lars continued piloting the ROV along the structure. The symbols continued row after row, covering hundreds of feet of surface area. Then the wall ended. The ROV emerged into an open space, a kind of courtyard or plaza. The seafloor here was different. It wasn't covered in nodules, it was flat, paved. The paving stones fit together with almost no gaps. Each one was roughly 2 feet square, and they extended in all directions beyond the reach of the lights. In the center of the plaza was a raised platform, circular, about 30 feet in diameter. The platform had steps leading up to it. Steps. Underwater, at 21,000 feet. Dr. Vandenberg felt dizzy. Her scientific training told her this was impossible. But the video feed didn't lie. The camera showed steps. Deliberate, evenly spaced, leading up to a platform that served no geological purpose. Peter Klaus made a decision. He picked up the satellite phone and made another call. This time, not to company headquarters. This time, to the Belgian Ministry of Defense. The conversation was brief. When he hung up, he turned to the crew. "We're done here. Bring the ROV up." "We're heading to port." Dr. Vandenberg protested. "We need more footage. We need samples. We need to document this." Peter shook his head. "Those aren't my orders anymore." Within 30 minutes, the mining company issued a communications blackout. All crew members were required to sign non-disclosure agreements on the spot. The penalties for violation were severe, including criminal charges. The ROV footage was classified Level 5. The coordinates were scrubbed from the ship's public navigation logs. The crew was confused, angry. They had just made what could be the most important archaeological discovery in human history, and they were being ordered to forget about it. One crew member, a Dutch engineer named Willem van der Berg, managed to copy the sonar data and several video clips onto a portable hard drive before the ship's servers were locked down. A week later, after the ship docked in Honolulu and the crew was dismissed, Willem anonymously sent the data to a marine archaeology blog. The blog published the images with the headline, "Geometric Anomaly Discovered in Pacific Mining Zone." Within hours, the story went viral. Scientists around the world began analyzing the images. Some called it a hoax. Others called it the discovery of the century. The mining company issued a statement denying everything. They claimed the images were fabricated, but the damage was done. The story was out, and governments around the world had taken notice. The Clarion-Clipperton Zone isn't just a mining frontier, it's also a geopolitical chessboard. The zone is in international waters, which means no single country owns it. But if something is discovered that has historical, scientific, or strategic importance, the rules become murky. Who has jurisdiction over an archaeological site in international waters? Who decides what happens to it? When the story of the structure broke, several governments immediately dispatched research vessels. France sent the oceanographic vessel L'Atalante. The United Kingdom sent the RS James Cook. The United States sent a Navy research ship. China sent the Jiaolong, their advanced deep-sea submersible. The official reason was biodiversity assessment, but that was a cover story. Multiple sources reported detecting military-grade sonar signals in the area. These weren't biological surveys, these were reconnaissance operations. The research vessels weren't studying fish. They were looking for more structures, and based on leaked satellite data, they found them. Between March and July 2024, at least 3 more geometric anomalies were detected in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, all within 1,000 miles of the original discovery, all showing similar mathematical symbols, all at similar depths. One structure, located approximately 400 miles northeast of the first, was even larger. Sonar imaging suggested it was over 1,000 feet long with multiple levels, resembling a terraced pyramid. Another structure, found 600 miles to the south, appeared to be a network of interconnected tunnels extending deep into the seafloor. The third structure was the most puzzling. It was perfectly circular, about 200 feet in diameter, and appeared to be hollow. Some researchers speculated it could be a shaft or entrance to a deeper complex, but none of this information was made public. The governments involved coordinated their silence. The research data was classified, the story began to fade from public consciousness. But behind closed doors, intense discussions were taking place. Discussions about what this discovery meant. Discussions about what to do next. In July 2024, the International Seabed Authority held its annual meeting in Kingston, Jamaica. The main agenda item was finalizing the mining code, the set of regulations that would govern deep-sea mining operations. This had been in the works for years. Mining companies were eager to begin commercial operations. billions of dollars were at stake. But something unexpected happened. 32 countries announced they were joining calls for a moratorium on deep-sea mining. A moratorium is a temporary ban, a pause to allow more research before moving forward. The countries included France, Germany, the United Kingdom, Brazil, Chile, Costa Rica, Malta, Austria, Tuvalu, Honduras, and Guatemala. This was a significant increase. Just months earlier, only 25 countries had supported a moratorium. The official reason was environmental concern. The newly discovered biodiversity, the 5,580 species including over 5,000 new to science, needed to be studied and protected. But insiders knew there was another reason. The structures. The governments that had sent research vessels had shared their findings in classified briefings. The consensus was clear: something extraordinary was down there. Something that could fundamentally change our understanding of history. Mining operations would destroy it. Once you start vacuuming up nodules and churning sediment, you can't undo the damage. Any artifacts, any evidence, any information stored in those structures would be lost forever. The moratorium was a way to buy time, but not everyone agreed. Several countries led by China and Russia opposed the moratorium. They argued that deep-sea mining was essential for the global transition to renewable energy. The metals in those nodules are critical components of batteries for electric vehicles and energy storage systems. Without access to these resources, they claimed, the world would remain dependent on fossil fuels. They also pointed out that there was no definitive proof the structures were artificial. It was possible, they argued, that these were unusual geological formations. The metals company released a public statement calling the moratorium anti-science and economically irresponsible. Their CEO gave interviews claiming that environmental activists were using fear tactics to block progress. But privately, the metals company was worried. They had been planning to submit their exploitation application immediately after the July 2024 meeting. If approved, they could start operations as early as 2025. But after the discovery, they delayed. The official explanation was further environmental assessments. But the real reason was strategic. They knew that if they pushed forward and accidentally destroyed what could be an archaeological site of global importance, the backlash would be catastrophic. Their investors would flee. Governments would revoke their licenses. They could face criminal charges, so they waited. They hoped the controversy would die down, but the world didn't forget. And the scientists didn't reach a consensus, because the more they analyzed the data, the more questions arose. So what exactly is down there at 21,000 feet? Let's look at the possibilities. And I'm warning you, some of these are going to sound crazy. But the evidence we have doesn't fit any easy explanation. The first possibility is an Ice Age civilization. 50,000 years ago, Earth was in the grip of the last glacial maximum. Massive ice sheets covered much of North America, Europe, and Asia. Sea levels were approximately 400 feet lower than they are today. Large areas of the ocean floor that are now deep underwater were once exposed land or shallow coastal waters. It's possible that an advanced human civilization existed during this time. A civilization that built cities on what was then the coastline. Then, around 12,000 years ago, the ice began to melt. Sea levels rose rapidly. The coastal cities were flooded. The civilization was destroyed. We know that anatomically, modern humans existed 50,000 years ago. We know they were intelligent and capable of complex social organization. Most archaeology assumes they were hunter-gatherers using stone tools. But what if that assumption is wrong? What if there was a branch of humanity that developed advanced technology far earlier than we think? The problem is evidence. We have no archaeological evidence of humans using metallurgy or advanced construction techniques 50,000 years ago. The earliest known smelting of metal dates to around 7,000 years ago. To accept that humans built these structures, we would have to throw out almost everything we think we know. But here's another possibility, and this one is even more unsettling. What if intelligent life evolved on Earth long before humans, but from a completely different lineage? Not apes, not mammals, something else entirely. The most compelling version of this idea suggests an aquatic species, an intelligent cephalopod perhaps, that evolved complex cognition, tool use, and eventually civilization. These creatures would have lived entirely underwater, building their cities on the ocean floor. They would have thrived for thousands or even millions of years, developing technology adapted to an aquatic environment. Then, at some point, they went extinct. Maybe a mass extinction event, maybe climate change. All that remains are their ruins. This sounds like science fiction, but it's not entirely implausible. We know that octopuses and squids are remarkably intelligent. They can solve puzzles and use tools. We also know that intelligence has evolved multiple times on Earth independently. Why couldn't an aquatic species have done the same? The challenge is the archaeological record. If an intelligent aquatic species existed, where are the fossils? The ocean is vast and largely unexplored. Less than 20% of the seafloor has been mapped in high resolution. It's possible that their remains are down there, buried or decomposed beyond recognition. But there's one more possibility, the one that keeps government officials awake at night. What if the structure isn't a building at all? What if it's a ship? Not a human-made ship, a vessel from somewhere else. 50,000 years ago, an advanced spacecraft from another solar system entered Earth's atmosphere. Maybe they were exploring. Maybe they were in distress. For whatever reason, they didn't achieve a controlled landing. The ship crashed into the Pacific Ocean and sank to the seafloor. The crew either died on impact or abandoned the vessel. The ship has been sitting there ever since, slowly being buried by sediment. The geometric structure we found isn't a building. It's the hull. The symbols aren't writing. They're part of the ship's systems. This explains several puzzling aspects. First, the unknown material composition. If the structure is made from an advanced extraterrestrial alloy, it wouldn't match anything in our database. Second, the mathematical symbols. If an alien species developed mathematics, they would likely use a different base system. Base 8 might be universal for a spacefaring civilization. Third, the perfect preservation. If the structure is made from material designed to survive space travel, it could remain intact for tens of thousands of years. And finally, the immediate government secrecy. If world governments suspected this was an extraterrestrial craft, they would absolutely classify the discovery. Whoever gains access to alien technology first gains an insurmountable advantage. And get this, there's one more angle that almost nobody is talking about. What if this isn't ancient at all? What if it's modern? What if one of the world's governments built this structure in secret during the Cold War? The 1960s and 70s saw massive investment in classified black budget projects, underwater installations, secret submarine bases. What if the United States or the Soviet Union built a deep-sea research facility in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone? A facility designed to develop advanced weapons. They built it at extreme depth to ensure secrecy. Then something went wrong. The facility was abandoned and deliberately buried to hide the evidence. This would explain the mathematical symbols. They could be part of a human-designed computer interface using non-standard notation for security. It would explain the unknown materials. Classified military projects often develop proprietary alloys that aren't in civilian databases. The problem with this idea is logistics. Building a structure at 21,000 feet would require technology that even today we barely possess. To build something at that depth in the 1960s would have required technology far beyond what we publicly know existed. Which brings us back full circle. Maybe the technology did exist. Recovered technology. Reverse-engineered technology. Here's where we are right now. November 2024. The International Seabed Authority is meeting in Kingston, Jamaica. They're supposed to finalize the mining code, but 40 countries are blocking it, demanding a moratorium until we understand what's actually down there. The metals company is fighting back. They claim the moratorium is anti-science. They say we need these minerals for the green energy transition. But here's what they're not saying. Since March 2024, 3 more geometric anomalies have been detected, all within 1,000 miles of the original discovery, all showing similar mathematical symbols, all at similar depths. This isn't one structure, it's a network. And every day we wait to mine, more evidence accumulates that we're not excavating minerals. We're excavating an archaeological site, or a crash site, or something from a species that was here long before us. The scientists who discovered 5,580 new species in February are terrified, because we don't just risk destroying unknown animals, we risk destroying unknown civilizations, or evidence of contact, or technology that could change everything. For phone batteries, the pressure to keep this quiet is enormous. Mining companies have billions invested, governments have strategic mineral interests. Nobody wants to admit we found something that rewrites human history, so the footage exists, the sonar scans exist, the crew members exist. But how long before this becomes another story buried deeper than the discovery itself? There's a phrase in archaeology: context is everything. An artifact without context is just an object, but an artifact in its original location tells a story. The structure in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone has context. It's surrounded by symbols. It's part of a network. It's preserved in sediment that can be dated. Mining operations don't preserve context. They destroy it. They treat the seafloor like a conveyor belt. Scoop it up, process it, move on. Any artifacts become crushed, any structures become rubble, any information becomes lost. This is why the moratorium is about more than environmentalism. It's about preserving human knowledge. It's about making sure we don't make an irreversible mistake. But the clock is ticking. The metals company has stated they plan to submit their exploitation application regardless of the ongoing debate. If the International Seabed Authority approves it, mining could begin in 2025. Other companies are watching closely. If one company succeeds, others will follow. The race will be on. And once it starts, it will be almost impossible to stop. So what do you think is down there at 21,000 feet? An ancient human civilization that we've erased from history? A non-human species that built cities before we existed? A crashed alien vessel carrying technology beyond our understanding? Or a secret military project hidden by governments? Let me know your theory in the comments, and if you think this story needs more investigation, hit that like button and subscribe. Because the pressure to bury this discovery is almost as intense as the pressure at the bottom of the ocean. And stories like this need people who refuse to let them disappear.